Hello ETL enthusiasts, greetings for the day. Welcome to this presentation related to Informatica interview perspective, how to pass the interview. This is like a guide, how to pass the interview. Part 3, let us start. Let's see the agenda that we have been discussing on this series of presentations. The expectation of the interview or interviewer. Okay. Interview generally consists of 5 parts: the current project and about your self-explanation, data warehouse basics, Informatica Power Center, SQL, and Unix. These red things we already discussed and the presentations are available. Informatica Power Center is Bahubali here. So we have 3 parts. 1 and 2 parts are already available and published for you. Third one is in progress, that is the current presentation. Okay. Let us see the current agenda of this presentation. There are few more important things that interviewer may be interested in and you must know them, which are dynamic target file multiple file creation, incremental load from input, SD2 mapping flow and explanation of each and every transformations you use in, and error handling. How do you handle the errors that comes from the source or while processing your data in your mapping. So those things are very important to understand and explanation. So that's why I'm considering all these things in this presentation. Let us start the music. The first one we are discussing here is dynamic target file creation. There may be multiple scenarios here, so we'll talk one by one. Okay. So I have a source data, something like below, and wanted to create multiple target files based on the input file, and dynamic file names have to be generated. It may be based on department or city of the particular employee or dates, today's date, or whenever you run, that date has to be there. Okay. So how do we do that? Okay, that is a very important question. So let us see the example input. I have employee ID, employee name, department. So here I am looking for department wise target files. So say for example I have IT, daily labor, engineering, 3 departments. So 3 files have to be created once you complete your session run. Okay. So 3 outputs are expected because we have 3 departments from source. One is IT CSV file and daily labor CSV file and engineering CSV file. First 2 are IT department, so that's why the file has the IT people. And after daily labor, Ravan is daily labor here, and Lakshman Bharat are in engineering. Okay, so the 3 files have been created from this mapping or session that we are going to create. Okay, let us see the steps of this mapping. Before that, what's the expectation of the interview is very important here. Okay, so what he is expecting is how a mapping flow can be created for this one, and the transformations which are important to be used, and how do you explain them, the transformation, what are you going to do there to achieve the proper output. Okay, so let us see an illustration with a mapping flow. So how to answer this question? Okay, first to prepare a mapping flow on a paper, okay, like below, and start explaining the important logic in the expression or transaction control. So the example here I have source qualifier, which may not be needed explanation here, but expression, what you are going to do in the expression, what are you going to do in the transaction control, why we need transaction control, and how do you do it in the target. How do you create a dynamic file name, dynamic data in target is very important. Let us see how to do that. So these are very important here, expression and transaction control. What do you do here is important, and that's what interviewer is expecting from you, the proper explanation of expression, why you're doing that and why you need a transaction control here. Okay, not all the time we need transaction control, that's why we have a star here. It's condition supply, so sometimes we need it, sometimes we don't need it, depends on the requirement. Let us see how it goes. I have a scenario 1 here. Okay, so it's asking to generate files for each and every session run. Say for example, this particular session run for 3 times a day, then 3 different files are being expected here. Okay, so only date based here. Okay, so before that we'll see the step 1. Okay, step 1, this is very important. This is the target definition we have here. Okay, the column names here. If you see the round mark here, this one is a port. File name is a port that you have been added here as a third column. File name, this is not changeable. You can't rename or you can't change anything. File name. Okay, and it is string is default and 256 characters here. This is very important for dynamic file creation. So the port you use in the expression for file name can be attached to the link to the target file name. Okay, this is very important step. Let us see the step 2 for the same scenario. Step 2. Okay, the source qualifier is connected here in expression. Okay, in the expression I have a one variable is being created for session start time. Okay, session start time. I can't use a date for the file name, that's why I'm just changing it as a string to character. Session start time is the start date of the session, particular session from the system. That's why it is system date. It's a date format. So I have to change it as this format and 2 characters so that you can use it as a name. Okay, so the file name output is also a string of 256 character. I'm giving a name like this, trade underscore, this is trade file, trade underscore v file date, whatever date has been created here, dot dat. Okay, so third one we are doing connecting this output file name, the file name that we have created here, and putting into the target, connecting into the target. Okay, so this way, if you observe this date, the v file date we have in YYY, MMDDHH and MISS format. MISS seconds also we are calculating. That's why whenever session runs, it will be a different seconds for that particular minute or particular hour. So that will create a new files whenever you run it. So multiple session run, multiple files will be created here. That is our requirement. Okay. Here we are seeing another scenario for the same target multiple file creation. Okay, so the question for you is same like scenario 1. So generating files for every session run. Okay, in scene 1 we discussed in the previous slides, we are creating multiple files on a particular day if it run multiple times. But this time, how to create only one file per day. Say for example, it ran for 4 times a day. Still I want to create only one file, but it's accumulated file. Say for example, 10 records came in the first session run. Second session run you got 10 more records. The final after second session run I need 20 records present in the target file. Okay, that is the question for you. Try to answer that. It will be simple. Let us see the other scenario that we are discussing here for dynamic target file creation. I need transaction control here. Please observe that. So scene 2 here, we're talking about generating files based on a value of the port. It may be department name, it may be city name, it may be state name, it may be different trade name or whatever name you want to mention. Okay, so the requirement is. So step 1, in source qualifier itself, I will sort the data based on the port in source qualifier, or we will use sorter in case of source is a file, which can be used further in the name department ID. So department ID based source qualifier has a order by condition in the source qualifier override, or I will use sorter if it is file. Okay. In expression, in step 2, I will have these variables and output file name to find out whether the previous record and current records department is same or not. Okay, say for example, I have source qualifier which is sorted by department, and I have 10 records here. Sriram, Sita, Lakshman, Bharat, Shatagna and Ravan, Hanuman are coming. All are different departments. Okay, so first Sriram coming for IT department. In expression it is IT. It won't go to transaction control because we have a condition here. Okay, The second one is Sita, which is also same department. So in expression, if you compare the previous and current one, the change flag will be 0. There is no change in that. Now Lakshman is coming, who is engineering department, that is different department. Now the change flag become 1. Sorry, yeah, it become 1. Then I will use the transaction control to commit the transaction before the department, that before the change itself, and then it commits into the target. Okay, so current department, current department is equal to department name that is coming from source now. Change flag I'm using, and previous department is previous department that I already been read from the source. I will compare in change flag. If current department is equal to previous department, if both are same, then I wanted to accumulate it. That's why I'll make it 0. Otherwise, it will be 1. Okay. So O change flag is equal to change flag, whatever data is coming from, and O file name is equal to I department name dot dat. I department, whatever department name we are coming from, maybe it.csv or it.dat file name that we have been created here. Let us see the third step to understand the transaction control here. The importance of the transaction control here. Step 3. Okay. In transaction control, I will put a condition like this. If O change flag from expression is equal to 1, that means the department has been changed for this input record, then TC commit before. Okay, if a new department is coming, then we have to commit the transaction that whatever we accumulated before the transaction has to be committed into the target using the file name that we have created in the expression with the department name trade underscore department name dot dat has to be connected with the target so that our files will be created. If the change flag is equal to 0, that means there is no change in the department, the same record is coming, we have to accumulate. That's why we are saying TC continue transaction, it will loop through to get all the input records for the particular department. Until then it will load then. Okay, that's the TC continue transformation or TC commit before it commits the transaction. Okay, so connect ports from transaction control to target and execute the workflow to create multiple files based on the department name. The next one we're talking about is incremental load. Okay, let us see. So incremental load, in a typical project, data comes from sources every day. Sometimes source sent all the data they have. From those, you will have to extract only the ones which are not extracted already. Say for example, 10 records came yesterday. Today we are getting 20 records. That means we are getting yesterday's records also. But you have to extract only the data that have been already modified or that have been created today. That is incremental data load. Let us see. So what is the expectation of the interviewer on this question? So explain what is incremental load in your project. Says, take some example, trade is coming from different source, SIS, and this data you are getting all the data whatever they have daily. So you have to use incremental load process or technique to get only the new records or updated records which are not have been read already. Okay, so how a mapping flow that you are explaining this logic is working, how to achieve the specific business rules with that mapping flow. Okay, let us see illustration. What is an incremental load and how to do it? So I have a simple mapping here to explain you better. Source qualifier, and an expression I have, and then target. Okay, let us see steps. Step 1, I need a mapping variable to store the last load date, the date that have been the maximum date for today's load from source data, whatever is loaded. Okay, from tomorrow we have to load the data greater than of this last update date. That's why we need this in a variable. In expression, I will take two variables to check current and previous last update dates, and I'll update this particular variable with a max date among those. Say for example, we set variable flag is equal to if we current last update date is greater than the last update date that we already have. That means our current data that is coming from source is maximum value than whatever we already have in this variable. Then we are setting this maximum variable into last update date. Say for example, you have loaded on 1/1/2022 and the source qualifier is getting another record 2/2/2022, then 2 will be loaded into this one. This will be updated with the 2/2/22. Okay, let us see more understanding in the next illustration. Let me explain you the better logic. Okay, but the variable that we're talking about has been used somewhere which I didn't discuss yet. Okay, well, that has to be used. The variable that we are using must be used in source qualifier SQL override in where condition to read only data greater than this last update date, so that we will read only the recent records or updated records. Okay, that's why we need to use there in the source qualifier while reading itself. Okay, let us see with an illustration with an example here so that we'll understand better. The first variable value, the default value will be something like this. Okay, we don't have the transaction at that particular time, that's why we put this one 1900. Okay, after reading first record, this is the lowest value of this one, so maximum value is 1/1/2021, so that will be settled here because we have a set variable to set that max value into that variable. Okay, we have 1/1/2021 here. Okay, now I'm reading the second record. Now I'm reading second record, so the maximum value in the second record is 2/2/2022 because 1/1 is less than 2/2/2022. So the current value in last update date variable is 2/2/22. If you read the third record, the value will be changing as 3/4/2022. That's how our variable will be changing, and this max variable, the persistent max variable, will be used in source qualifier to read only the data which is greater than 3/4/2022 tomorrow. Okay, so these last update date will be changing from source system itself, so that we will only extract the recent data. Okay, that's how the incremental load works. Let us see the next topic here, which is SD2 mapping flow. This is also very important. Okay, SD2 flow explanation is very important, so you must know the transformation that we generally use it. Okay, what is the expectation of the interviewer? Simple. Explanation of SD2 and its type. There are three types of SD2, right? Versioning, flag, and database. Active indicator base. How a mapping flow would be, and explain the important transformations like lookup, expression, router, and update strategies role in it. That's very important. Okay, let us see the mapping flow and try to explain how to do it. Okay, let us see the illustration here. So I have source qualifier, and here I have an expression, and if you see, I have a lookup based on a target table, and the values from lookup and expression 1 will go into expression 2 to flag the records whether they are insert or update based on the expression 1 and then lookup values. Now router, which has two different groups, one is insert group, one is update group, and update strategy to insert and update the records into the target, same instance, target 1 and target 2. of the same target, but two instances. And there are some multiple unconnected lookups here, which are used in expression 1 to get the domain values or lookup values, and then go for these all calculation. Okay, it's very important flow. You may be noting down in a paper and explain him each and everything, especially the green ones, which are very important. Let us start from the expression 1. Expression 1 is used for formatting the input ports and input fields and calculate the MD5 for those input field values which can be compared with the target values. In this expression, I must be using these unconnected lookups to derive all the values which are needed for target and calculate the MD5 for the particular input source record. And also, the trade ID, input trade ID will be taken into the lookup and get the related values which are already there in the target table to check whether it is already there or there are any updates. It is already there and there may be some updates coming from source, or the target table doesn't have this record, that will be insert. If it has and there are changes coming from source today, then that will be an update group. Okay, so in expression 2, that is the expression 1. Let us see the expression 2 here. Lookup here first. Okay, so lookup I use from source. I will take it as trade ID into the lookup and see whether it is already loaded yesterday or wherever it is loaded. Get matched target table ports to calculate the MD5 value so that I can compare the MD5 we calculated in expression 1. So that will be extracted to expression 2. Now expression 2 has both input MD5 value for a particular record, for a source record, and as well as from lookup we have a target value if it is already present. If it is not present, then an insert path. If it is present, then we have to find out whether it is update path or insert path or both paths. Okay, so expression 2 be used to compare source and target record of the particular record and for their MD5 values. If the MD5 values are exactly same, that means we have record in target already. There is no need to load this record because there is no change. Or second case, if expression 1, the input value is not present in lookup, that means it's a new record coming today, that will go in an insert route. If the source record coming a particular trade which is already present in lookup, which already came yesterday, but today we are getting a different currency or a different country or a different trade ID, trade details, any one of them, then we have a change in this lookup. So the values of this MD5 will be changing. In expression 2, we will find out the differences. If that is different, if input and target records are different, then we can insert and update. Both has to be done. Okay, update the existing record with active indicator no and effective end date. And for insert, it's a new record. It's like a new record we're inserting with active indicator Y and start date as today's date. End date will be 12/31/999 like that. Okay, or null, whatever it is we wanted to. Okay, that's the flow. In router, we have two groups. One is for insert, one is for update. And two flows will go with a update strategy, insert and update. Okay, two flows will be here. One is insert, one is update. If the record is already present and there are changes coming from source today, then it will go into two path. One is update, first updates the record and then target will be inserted a new record. If there is no change, then it won't go into either of this. If it is new record and lookup doesn't have it, then it will be insert record only, insert flow only. That's the explanation of this SD2. Let us see the next topic, that is error handling. Error handling is very important. Okay, topic. Let us see the expectation of the interviewer. Explain what error handling technique is in Informatica with some examples in your current project. How do you do it? Okay. So Informatica error handling, let us understand the Informatica error handling here. Okay, error handling in Informatica can be done through some session settings. These settings allow you to determine if the session fails or continues when it encounters pre-session command error or a stored procedure error or specified session error. So the session properties, session config object tab, error handling tab. Okay, let us see that picture here. So this is our session properties. We have different tabs here: general properties, config tab, map, components, and metadata extensions. We are in config tab, as said, session and config tab for error handling techniques. See error handling. Okay, there are multiple options here: stop on error, override tracing, on stored procedure error, on pre-session command error, on pre-post SQL error, error log type. How do you want to log the errors? Error log type, you want to do it relational. Log type DB connection. If it is relational, you have to give the DB connection. Error log table and prefix if you want to give it. Likewise. Okay, these are the options that we have to set. Okay, let us see these options more later. Let us slide. Let us see the first one, stop on errors. Okay, stop on errors by default it's 0 records. That means it won't stop on errors. If any errors coming from input are non-fatal, that will be routed to the redo log or error log or rejection log. Okay, that will be stored in there. If we change this stop on errors to 1, that means even a first error encounter, the session will fail. In production, we expect stop on errors must be 1, so that it has to fail on the first record itself, irrespective of sending it to error log or rejection log, so that the further processes will not fail or will not go into errors. That's why we'll keep stop on errors as 1 in production. In development, it may be 0, so that you can see the errors in error log. Second one is override tracing. None by default value. Transformations tracing level will be overwritten. So tracing level is important in log. How do you log the data when in case of errors, and general log details, so that you will know what happened in that particular transformation. Every transformation has this. It has 5 properties like normal, terse, verbose init, verbose data. Those different types of setups you can do it. So if you do terse in mapping transformation, whereas in session if you change it as normal, then it will be changed. So that is override. We are overriding the tracing level that has already been set in the mapping. Okay, let us see the next one, on SP error. So SP is stored procedure error. If it is stored procedure error, it is like it is happening in database. That's why you have to decide whether you want to stop by default or you want to continue even you have an error in stored procedure. Sometimes stored procedure errors won't impact your session run. That's why we have that option too. That is a pre-session command task. You have an Unix command to run in a pre-session to see whether you want to clear the duplicates from a source file. You can do that if your Informatica system is installed on the Unix. That's why you have this one. So first one is error or stop. By default is stop. Okay. If you don't use it, then it won't impact. If you don't use the pre-session or post-session commands, then you don't need to set this up. By default it's stop, but you don't have any command, so it won't fail. Now continue if you want to continue. Even there is a failure, if there is no impact, then you can continue, right? Say for example, the duplicates are coming from source and you have a pre-session command to remove the duplicates that didn't work. In your session, you already put a sorter to take the distinct value, then you're good. You don't need to stop this session. Okay. In general, in production, we'll stop it, but it depends on your requirement. Okay. On pre-post SQL error, so you have a stored procedure or some command, select or update or insert command you have in pre-session or post-session, then you have to decide whether you want to stop it or continue. In general, for every error, it want to stop. So session always have stop by default. Okay, you can continue also. Sometimes you don't need to worry about that. Next option to set is error log type. So error log type, how do you want to do it? Is it a file? In general, it's file. So none is default. File, you can write the errors into file, or you can use relational. If you use relational, then Informatica Integration Service automatically creates 4 tables to store the error information of that particular session. Okay, For information, it can't catch the XML errors in file or relational, but in session log. It will catch in session log, but it won't catch in the file relational error files that you have been creating here. If you mention the error log type is relational, then you have to give the relational database connection, and error log table name prefix is your wish if you want to add the prefix. Let us see what type of errors we have in general. There are fatal and non-fatal errors. Okay, fatal errors are like DB table structural. Say for example, one column not found, but you mentioned in the Informatica mapping to load. Or memory space issues. There is no space left in the target table where you are writing. DB connectivity, that means your database is down, or Unix is down on the database, or whatever it is issue. Table or object doesn't exist. You think it exists, but it's deleted. Or password issues, or logging, or bulk load issues. Then in such case, we can't handle these errors. This will fail. Fatal errors can't be handled. Non-fatal errors, that like any errors in the data, any rejections, data type issues, transformation level of issues, they can be routed to error log or rejection log in general. Non-fatal errors can be handled. Fatal errors can't be handled. Okay, simple logic. Okay. I want to tell you something that I have never seen a project is using these error handling techniques in my 15 years of experience. I have worked in multiple big banks, US banks, and multiple retail and engineering projects where we never use these ones. So every project has their own way of handling the errors. As I said, we create a files, and then files will be sent to source system itself. Source system team, production support team, they will look into the errors and they will come back what to do with those errors. Okay, so let me explain one of the best one I ever had in my experience. Okay. Sometimes in projects, clients won't bother even there are errors from source, because from source systems also we are extracting from production data. So if source has the production data has errors, that's valid, right? I mean, if why they are keeping it the error data, that means they are valid. So some clients, they don't want to restrict the data, they want to load all the data, but they want to have a comment saying why there is no data for this particular important field. Okay, so those things can also be putting there, and then once the load completes, we have to send those data to the every member's production support source system and everybody, so that they will analyze it, analyst and all those stuff. Okay, so my one of the earlier project has error handling as below. Okay, so they usually calculate 5 error types. Okay, every error type has an error code and error description. Okay, so error type 1, so primary key errors. So trade ID is very important from source, so that I will generate primary key or composite key here, trade ID underscore date and time and the file name and source system. All these things will be concatenated and created a primary key or composite key in my target table. In such case, trade ID is very important. If trade ID is coming as null, there is something wrong, so we don't want to load it. In such case, we'll load this error type 1 E1 error code into a file. We can't load it because primary key is very important. Error type 2, lookup or domain key error. Say for example, source system is sending some IND currency, whereas our currency table from global currency table is doesn't have IND, but it has INR. So in such case, domain key errors will come. Foreign key errors. There are foreign keys that which are very important. Say for example, I am sending employee data with department ID. I have a table department, but department ID, what you are sending from source is not present in that department table. Then we can't load the data. That is foreign key errors. Error type 4, not null field errors. That means there are some fields, trade ID, that must not be null, but you are sending null from source. That means that's an error, and you don't want to load it in our target table. That is our project requirement. The client of the current project, our end user of the current project, doesn't want the data. Even the source production system, they wanted it, but we don't want it, and we want to inform the source system. That's why we have this setup. Error type 5, there are format issues. Say for example, date I'm expecting in mmdd YYY, but they are sending YYY mmdd, then my system, my mapping is failing, right? Because I don't have logic, because this is not expected, but source is sending that. Okay, we didn't expect that till this point, so we wanted to make it as an error. After generation of this error file with all these error codes, if file has greater than 0 records for a particular load, then that file has to be sent to all production teams and analysts so that they will analyze the errors and then ask the source system what they have to do with that, or reprocessing can be possible. Once the source team correct the data and send them again next day, we'll process that data. Okay? That's what the reprocessing concept is. Let us see the error handling in real time that I did in my earlier project. The flow one I'm explaining here: source qualifier and expression. And I have a lookup here, an expression and router, and two flows here. One is for target. Okay. Second one is whenever there is a domain key error, foreign key error, not null field error, these errors that we discussed in the previous slide, that will go into this route, expression route, and then error file. Router has two paths. One is target and one is the error file path. Okay, this is the flow here. Let me explain the second flow here. Reprocessing the error file. So we have created the error file earlier, right? So that error file I'm using it as a source here. Okay. So I will extract the data from source and error file both and joiner. And so okay, if you see the error file, I will get the trade ID from here and compare with the source the same trade ID. If trade ID is coming new one, then very good. We'll see, we'll do all these joiner, expression, lookup, and check all these errors. If new source data for this particular trade ID is good, then we load the data into target and we also update the error file. We'll remove the data, the particular input record that we have been tagged as an error, that will be removed from this error file. Okay, that's the reprocesses. Okay, if all yesterday's 10 errors have been reprocessed and came from source and new data and perfect data, that will be loaded into target, but our error file will have 0 and no email will be sent to the source system today. Okay, that's the reprocessing we do. Let us see the sample error file. We are talking about so many errors and we wanted to see the error file sample. Okay, so I have a trade ID, instance ID, source system, which source system sent this data, and trans date, and error code, error description of that code, validated column, which column from source have an error, value of that particular source value, and then load date and the reprocess indicator. Okay, so trade ID is 1001 and 2001 is instance ID. Source system it is sending is Sriram Informatica system, information system. Sent on transaction date that from source were coming is 2021-0101. Error code is E12. What was the E12? So trade instance ID is not nullable. Okay, so trade instance ID is one of the column which you sent null value from source. Okay, load date is this one, reprocess indicator is N, that means this will be sending a new error that will be sending to source system. I have another trade ID. Okay, trade ID number I forgot to change it, or I think the same trade we have multiple errors. Okay, one is E12 and second one is E01. Date format is expected this format, whereas instance date column we are getting 04032021 data, so that is an error here. For the same trade we have two errors. Third is different trade, we are getting an error E44, the currency code not found in dim currency lookup. This is domain key error. The second one is formatting error. First one is not nullable error or primary key error. Last one is currency, domain key error, that means lookup error. So in INST, instance currency is the column that coming from source has IND, whereas our lookup, currency lookup has INR. That's why this is an error and reprocess indicator is N. I hope you understand this better. That's the end of the discussion, and we have I have some questions for you which may be simple, but interviewers may ask this ones. Okay, these are frequently asked questions. Let us see. If I have a source file to load okay, which has 1000 records. You have 5 targets to load. Okay, so the requirement is to load like below. 1 to 10 records has to go target 1, 11 to 20 target 2, likewise 49 to 50 target 5. Okay, but we have 1000 records, right? From 51 to 60, that has to go to target 1, 61 to 70, that has to go target 2. Like this, it has to be repeated. Okay, that is one of the question. Let us see the second question. Try to answer them in the comments, or try to answer your own way, no problem. If you have any question, you can comment, you can mention in the comment. Okay, if you want any explanation, specific explanation from your previous interview question, I am ready to explain. Thank you. You can add it into the comments. Let us see the next question. If you have a source file to load which has 1000 records and duplicate records are expected from source, so how to avoid duplicates? Okay, you may be thinking it's simple. You can use sorter, right? Or you can use source qualifier override to have the duplicates distinct class, so that you can avoid the duplicates. Okay, but typical our Indian interviewers mostly, if they know that you will answer that way, right, sorter, that's why they'll say uh, do that without sorter. He always wanted different creative approach, Indians, right? So which he never did in his experience, but he wanted that way. So you have to find out a way which doesn't use sorter or say SQL override to remove the duplicates. Let us see the next question. How to generate a Cartesian join using joiner transformation in a mapping. Okay. Next one is, you have a session loads data from file to target table. File has 10,000 records and issue, and you think, or there is an issue in the 630th record. Okay, you have to debug this record. If you start the debugging record, that record will come from 1 which doesn't have an issue until 630. How do you directly go to the 630 record? How to debug this record? Okay, what are the 3 reusable tasks in workflow manager and how do you use it? Okay, that's a very, very important question too. A workflow has 2 sessions. One is order, one is order haste. Okay, these sessions daily runs, okay, multiple times in a day. One session order has to run daily. The requirement is that one session order has to run daily or at any time a workflow run. Whereas the second session is expected, order history has to be updated only on 10th run of the first session. Say for example, 10 times order has already been run, then 10th time it has to run order history session also. 1 to 9, the order history should not run, but workflow should not fail. And 10th run, order and order history both has to run. How to achieve this is a very important question. You have to think about it. Okay, how to achieve that is also important. Okay, let us see the next question here. If you have like a mapping below, okay, how to insert update records in target without update strategy. If a source record is coming already present in target, then it has to go for an update. If it is insert, then it has to insert. You should not use update strategy. What are the settings you have to do in the wherever you want to do? Let us see the next question. How to achieve below? The source is this one and the target is this one. How do you achieve this with the mapping? You have to explain the mapping and logic. How do you convert these records into this way? Okay, that's the end of the presentation, folks. Thank you so much for watching this. If you have any questions, please post it in the comment, or if you want any particular task you have which you didn't understand or you want me to explain, that I am ready to explain. Even your current project, I am happy to explain. Please give me a thought in comment section. Thank you so much. Have a good day.